there's about 20 of us on the call at the moment, so I think that's um, probably good for the time being. Of course, if anybody joins in a moment, they can just hop in, and of course, we will be sending out the recording tomorrow to everybody who's registered anyway. Yeah, I wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to join the workshop today. Obviously, myself, Toby, I work on the support team here at Pupil Progress. I've been with Pupil Progress for about 2.5 years. So some of you, particularly if you've been a user of ours for a little while, you might recognize me. My colleague Ellie is on the call as well. She will be hopping in to answer any questions that you put on the Q&A throughout. We'll have some time for questions at the end as well. But yeah, well, now that we've done the introductions, let's get cracking, I suppose. So hopefully everybody can see my screen, and you can see on here, I've obviously just listed a few things that we will be going through today. So as I'm sure everybody knows, the focus of this workshop is going to be on tiered trackers on pupil progress. So this is, predominantly targeted towards teachers of maths, MFL, and science at GCSE. And yeah, basically today we're going to take a look at fundamentally, I guess, how they work, how to use tiered trackers, and how maybe some of the quirks that they have and the differences and how to work with those. Obviously, moving students between tiers, what you should do if you haven't actually tiered your students yet. So if you're in year 10 and you don't know where everybody's going to be, well, that's not a problem. We'll go through how you can sort that. Obviously, yeah, we'll look at adding an assessment to both tiers, utilizing custom grade boundaries so that you're able to do that effectively as well. And then, as I say, at the end of the call, we'll have some Q&A time. So I will be running through sort of these points for around about 20 minutes, and then we should have 10 minutes at the end, bring us up until 4 o'clock to answer any questions. But cool, so let's get started then. So you can see, obviously, here I am signed into Pupil Progress, and you can see the user that I'm signed in as at the moment. I have access to a few different subjects. Of course, conveniently, the ones that we'll be talking about today. So we've got maths, obviously we've got modern foreign languages. We've got Italian here, but it works the same for all GCSE and languages, and then obviously science as well. And the first thing you'll notice when you're using a tiered tracker is actually the button that shows when you go to open the tracker is a bit different. So you can see here, I've got a Key Stage 3 default tracker that I've set up, and you see you have the live tracking option. So if there's anybody on this call who uses Pupil Progress on a whole school level, or potentially teaches other subjects as well, which don't use tiers, or teaches Key Stage 3s, you'll know you just click live tracking to open it. But with a tiered tracker, it's a little bit different, and of course that depends on whether you're teaching a mixed tier class or a single tier class as well. So you can see, we'll start with this one we've got here, 11A2/MA, and we'll open up the higher tier version. Now, just to preface this, for the bulk of this call, we will be looking at maths, but I'll show also languages and science trackers as well, just to sort of show you how similar they all are really, and how everything we talk about, even though we'll be predominantly looking at maths, it will apply to all three really easily. But you can see here, so I'm in the higher tier, and this is going to show me the students in my class who are currently assigned to the higher tier, really. And it means when we add our published assessment, you can see here I've got the higher paper one from May 2022. These are the actual papers from the higher tier. You can see obviously all of the grades that the students have got here relate to the higher tier. And similarly, if we're to look at the grade boundaries that we're using, you can see obviously we're using higher tier grade boundaries as well. Now, obviously, as you can see, I just clicked there, we have the sort of toggle up at the top of the class. And this allows me really easily to switch between my students who are on the higher tier and my students who are on the foundation tier. And you can see it looks very, very similar, but the published assessments that we have obviously are different. the ones that apply to the foundation tier. And you can see we've got a completely different list of students here as well. And their grades, as we can see, are all matching, obviously, what is in the matching the foundation tier grade boundaries instead. And of course, as we scroll through, we'll just minimize all of this over here. And we can see that relates to the summary area as well, where we have all of the students' overall grades, obviously matching the foundation tier grade boundaries. So this is how it works. Obviously, if you have a mixed tier class, if you have a single tier class, it's even easier than this, really. So I'm just going to switch to one of my other classes from the option up here. Let's go to 11A1, and you see here, it's actually not going to let me sort of choose a tier in the same way that it did for the previous class. We switch to 11A1. This is a higher tier class. You can see straight away the toggles disappeared here. And if you do teach any other subjects, or if you do teach any untiered qualifications, as say A levels or Key Stage 3s, then you'll notice this obviously is a view you're very used to, I'm sure. But of course, all of the students, 11A1, we know they're our top set, and they are all taking the higher tier. And yeah, really the benefit of having it this way, it makes it really, really clear as to where the students' grades are coming from and the boundaries that are being used. So if we are to actually take a look at, say, our whole school reporting, if we go into analysis, we go to year 11 and the grade summary. And here we're going to take a look at maths, and you can see we've actually just got an icon next to every student's name, and this is just telling us which tier they're currently assigned to, so we know exactly where that data is coming from. You can see as well, right next to it, we've got our MFL, GCSE and Italian. We're getting the same sort of little F or H indicator here. And if I scroll over to the side towards combined science, you can see as well, we've got our F there to signify that the students are on the foundation tier. And yeah, just whilst we're on the topic, we'll just take a quick look at those other qualifications, as I say, just to just to sort of show you really that it works the exact same way. We're in a mixed tier class here in GCSE Italian. We've got all of our higher tier students. Just click the F and we are going to see all of our foundation tier students. So all nice and easy there. And as I say, down in science, well, looks like we haven't got a mixed tier class for science, but if I just click foundation, you see we won't get the toggle. And all of the grades that are going to be being produced for these students, you can see are ones that are attainable from the foundation tier. So that's a brief overview as to how they work, I suppose. But in terms of actually setting up your tiered trackers to work in the way that's best for you, is a bit of a different question, I suppose. Obviously, here we can see these are already assigned. Students are already assigned to the corresponding tier. But as you may know, or as you may remember, maybe from when you first started with us at Pupil Progress or the beginning of the year, when we first add your classes, you'll notice they all just get assigned to the higher tier by default. So you can see this 11A3, this would be an example of a class that we have literally just added. You can see there's nothing in here just yet, and all of the students are on the higher tier. Obviously, the reason for that is our system isn't able to pull that information from your MIS, particularly in a lot of cases, I suppose, if we're talking about year 10s when they may not be tiered just yet. So yeah, that is done really easily, done manually, so you can really easily switch your students' tiers around. So let's take a look at how we can do that really. So again, I'm just going to, I'm just going to click the tools option up from the top. And you can see really easily here, we've just got this move tiers or class button that appears from the right-hand side. So I'm just going to click that. And basically, this makes it really, really easy. Should we want to move either all of our students, you can see we can just click there. If we wanted to move all of our students over to foundation, maybe there's some we don't, so we can go on this move to tier column, choose who we're moving, whatever that may be, these students perhaps, and then we could just save the changes. But for now, maybe this is a foundation tier class for the time being, so we'll move them all. And you can see what happens is once we do that, you can see we get the icons appear just here. This is obviously just telling us that the system is in the process of moving. There we go. It's popped up as I've been hovering over it, but just in the process of moving the student to a different tier. So what we can do is if we refresh the page, it will now let us select the foundation tier, and we'll see all of our students on here instead. And this means that we'll be able to use all of our foundation past papers, foundation grade boundaries, and anything else that may differ about the two tiers of the qualification. So, okay, well, nice and easy to move to the tier that students on, I suppose. But sort of as we spoke about just a second ago, what should you do if you don't know which tier to put your students on? It's a question that we get quite often come through to our support team. Particularly, you know, we have our year 10s, or our year 10s have just started their GCSE process. We don't know which tier they're going to be on, so what should we do? And although, of course, on pupil progress, the student does need to be assigned to one or the other, just so obviously it's consistent which grade boundaries are being used, there is a really easy way to keep tracking and monitoring your students in a clear way without knowing which tier they're going to be on. So the way that we would do that is actually by adding customized assessments and by adding them to both tiers. And that means that whatever happens, the data that's entered for those students will be pulled from tier to tier, no matter how often you may need to move them back or forth. So we won't talk too much about adding assessments, just because I know my colleague Holly ran a workshop similar to this a few weeks ago about this. So we won't go into too much detail there. But as I say, the one that we specifically need for this question is customized assessments. And you'll see when you first go to add a customized assessment for a tiered qualification, you're going to get this message pop up advising you to add the assessment to both tiers. And we can do that here. So maths, we have obviously our end of topic test unit. So let's just add it to both here. This obviously means that that test is going to appear in both places. So we will call this assessment something demo workshop assessment 1, something like this. Let's just add this to now. We're not going to make any changes here. And we will add this at QLA. So maybe we'll have 3 questions. Just have Q1, Q2, Q3 to make it easy. And maybe each of these are 10 marks for a max of 30. So this is obviously all pretty straightforward. You just go through, add the assessment as you normally would. The only difference being you would make sure you add the assessment to both tiers from up here. But where it starts getting really quite useful is using the custom grade boundaries feature when adding your assessments to a tiered tracker. And this allows us to do a few different things, really. And the main purpose of having the ability to add custom grade boundaries is so that regardless of which tier the student is assigned to, whether they're on the higher or whether on the foundation, the grade that they receive for a certain assessment will be exactly the same. So what we can do here, we can set a consistent set of grade boundaries. We can even cap the grade as well. Maybe we just want grade 6 to be the maximum. So we're just going to put sort of 31 on each of these. See, obviously that means that none of the students will be able to achieve the grade. And then, yeah, maybe we would just want to add our grade boundaries in increments of 5 like this. Just an example, obviously completely up to you as to what you would want to do with your grade boundaries. But now the really cool thing about this is it means that, okay, well, no student is going to be able to get above a 6 because that's what we've decided. You might decide not to do that, obviously, but you have the ability to do so. And it also means that regardless of which tier the student ends up on, obviously at the moment, if you're not sort of really using tiers for them, later on when they move to the foundation or they move to the higher, this data is going to stick with them. Even though there's different grade boundaries, it's going to create an equivalent mark and make sure that the grade that they get is consistent and really, really clear and easy for the student to follow. You can obviously then choose which classes we would like to add that one to. I'm just going to add it to the 11A3 was the class that we were in, I believe, and create that there. And yeah, so this will just take a moment. Obviously, yeah, just to add the assessment, it's going to take us back to the tracker in just a second. And we should be able to see a new, in the end of topic test unit, that new assessment that we've just added for yeah, here we go, for those 3 questions. Cool, and we can see that here. Obviously, we've got our columns up here. And then we can just sort of start putting some data in for the students. So let's just do that. Let's just say John gets 2 on each. Elizabeth gets 5. Maybe get an 8 and a 9 there. And then Nancy, she gets 4 marks. And even though you can see we're on a foundation tracker here, the really cool thing about custom grade boundaries, obviously, as we know, we just saw, Nancy's still able to get a 6, even though she's not actually able to get a 6 on a foundation paper. And if we scroll over to the overall area, we can see she's actually on a 5, because that's maxed her out at the top grade. On this assessment, she is able to get a 6. And the real benefit to this is twofold, really, because of course it makes it much easier if you are to just keep all of your students on one tracker before you start tiering them, before you decide which one they're actually going to take their papers for, and it also helps you as.
Sorry to interrupt. I thought we have capped that they can't get 6, isn't it? So how do they get the 6 then?
Yeah, absolutely. So so we have capped the assessment. So if we go to look at it, you can see, which one was it? This one here. So you can see I've capped the assessment at a 6. So if a student gets 4 marks, so 30, but yeah, that's it. So they can't get any. They wouldn't be able to get a 7. That's absolutely right. But it's a really good question that you raise. A really good point that you raise. Because we can now see Nancy's on a 6, but she's on the foundation tier. So, you know, maybe something's not quite right there. We wouldn't want to enter her on the foundation tier if she's working at a 6. And you can see that by the sort of the difference in the grades over here. And so maybe, of course, whether you would want to do this early on or later on through the curriculum, we can actually then go in and as we spoke about before, we can move the students to the other tier as needed.
Sorry,
so we could say,
I keep interrupting. Can I just ask one more question, please?
Yeah, no worries.
This is based on the experience of what happened with our previous mock. So for some reason, again, I cannot, on the foundation, one of the students was predicted a 6. So given a 6 as a grade. Which we did not pick up at that time. During the final data analysis time, we realized, okay, how this student. But we then thought, okay, why does People Progress give an option for a foundation tiered student to even get a grade 6 when that's not possible? So we thought that's something that shouldn't actually happen. That should be sort of, People Progress as we enter the grades, no student should be getting a 6. To be honest, I don't see that as an advantage. I thought that's actually a fault.
Yeah, well, I mean, the advantage of this is it helps you as the teacher to understand where students are not currently on the correct tier. So you can see if we actually look at the student's overall grade, then she's not at a 6. She's at a 5 instead. But you can see because she has this assessment, maybe she would have more in time that are working at a 6. Then okay, well, really easy. Let's move her. Let's move this other student that's on a 5 maybe as well to the higher tier. And then once this loads through and we actually open up the higher tier here as well, we can see obviously, yeah, so we've got the same results here. We can see the tracker equivalent mark has changed because obviously the grade boundaries that we're using have changed. We're now using the higher tier grade boundaries. And we can see, yeah, here we well, so right on the borderline. This is a good example actually of yeah, a student who's right on the bottom. But if she was an extra sort of mark or 2 above, she would be on a 6 overall. It's only because that's I set the grade boundaries in a way where that's the very minimum to get a 6. And we can see that on this, which is an average of all of them, that wouldn't be enough on the papers later on. But basically, the point there, and as I say, Preeti, it's a good point that you raised. With the tiering and the custom grade boundaries, is it means that you can add your assessments for, say, all classes. Maybe you set the same paper for all classes, and maybe you would even want to have this as all grades are possible. So everybody in the year is sitting this assessment here, and you can get anything from a grade 1 to a grade 9, regardless of, you know, the tier that we think you're going to end up sitting. And as I say, from using the custom grade boundaries, you could do that so that regardless of which tier they're on now or in the future, the grade that they get for this paper that you've created would be consistent. Of course, if you're to use an exam board published grade boundary, exam board published paper, like if we take a look at one of these classes we looked at in the beginning, if you're to use an exam board published paper, you can see that the grades they get are completely in line with the tier that they're on. It's only for when you're creating those assessments and you want students to have the ability to achieve, you know, whichever grade is most appropriate on the assessments you've created, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, if we take a look back at our slide from the beginning, you can see, yeah, so obviously we've gone through how the how tier trackers work on pupil progress. You know, when you first set them up, they're on the higher tier. You can move those students between tiers really easily. Of course, if you teach a single tier class, then really straightforward. All of the data is just there. But obviously, if you teach a mixed tier class, you can switch between very easily. You can add an assessment to both tiers at the same time. Of course, as we've just been speaking about in terms of the utilizing the custom grade boundaries, so that there's a real consistency across all students in the year group, but also just so that data sticks with them regardless of whether you move them up or move them to higher, move them to foundation. And of course, you know, if you haven't tiered your students yet and you just want them to be able to get any grade, you know, we're in year 10, we don't know who's going to be on who's going to be at a 9, who's going to be at a 1. Well, we're just going to add them as customized assessments. We're going to make all of those grades possible. And then once we maybe have a bit more information in, we have a good idea of the level each student is working at. Okay, at that time, maybe we're going to start tiering the students. So yeah, thanks for listening, allowing me to go through that section there. I'm just going to pass to my colleague Ellie, just see if there's any sort of questions that have come up in the chat or anything that we can that I can help to address.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Toby. That was super insightful. As Toby mentioned, we've got a bit of time for Q&A. So if anyone does have any questions, please pop it in the chat or in the Q&A section. Either or is fine. But one question we do have already is in terms of, so someone's asked, in terms of reporting, can you combine both the foundation and higher on a class report?
Yes, it's a really good question. And the reason, well, the answer is not quite or no, and it's very sort of specifically as to why we've done that, really. Because there are different grade boundaries that are being used on each. So if we sort of open up one of our classes here, let's go with 11A1. And you can see, obviously, on a student report, you get loads of really useful information, things like the target grid area over here, that's telling you exactly how many marks the student is away from the next grade up. Now, of course, if we have data on both the higher and the foundation tier, which is what I'm assuming is the case for this person, then there's going to be some differences in the data that you that you get, I suppose. So in that case, what I think would probably be the best idea to do, particularly if it's multiple students that have that in there. Of course, you could do, as we said earlier, and have all of the assessments assigned to both tiers, and then it's all sticking with the student. Or what you could do, obviously, we've got our class on the higher tier here. We're going to toggle the tools. We can actually just download all of the reports here. That's going to email them to me in 2 or 3 minutes. And then, yeah, it'll just take us 30 seconds to do what we did earlier on the call, really. We can go through here, switch all of the students to Foundation. And you'll see it will just take a moment once this loads up. Again, we'll see the icon showing us that the students are moving. Just takes sort of 15 seconds, 20 seconds or so. Go to the Foundation tier and then toggle tools again, download our class reports. And then in my email inbox in 2 or 3 minutes, I'll have all of my student reports. Obviously not a great example of this one, because as you can see, there's not any, none of these students have any data on the Foundation tier, but all of that would be in my inbox, and you know, we'd be able to share both of those with the students.
Lovely, thank you, Toby. And just another question, another great one. Is there a way for science that we could do something similar to move between combined and single science?
Now that is a bit trickier and is a bit different, really. And the reason for that is combined and triple science are completely different specifications from the exam board. So it does make it a little bit trickier. Now, what you could do, what you definitely could do, is if you say have your combined, you know, you have students with combined science data, and say we want to go to, well, I haven't actually got a single science one on here. We'll take a look at A level because it worked the same. But let's just pretend this is our separate science in biology. Now, what you could do is actually use the copy existing assessment feature. So you'd be able to sort of copy any assessments from another tracker that already exists. So target tracker, as I say, let's pretend that's GCSE in biology. But we are going to copy maybe some of the assessment data that we added to our combined science tracker. So AQA Trilogy, maybe we'd want to include a published assessment. You see, obviously we've got loads and loads on here. Biology Foundation 2022 or whatever it may be. Or of course, if you have any customized assessments on that tracker, which I don't think I do. No, I do have a couple. You could choose to copy the assessments really easily across to the other qualification, and then you can use the bulk edit feature to really easily sort of copy and paste their data in. But in short, no, that is a little bit different, just due to how different the specifications can be.
Thank you. And just one last question, if we've got time. I know we're getting close to the end, but someone else has asked, can you have students in both specifications?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can absolutely have students in both specifications. Obviously, the one part with that, which would need maybe a bit of sort of context on your side, is of course, if we are to look at the students' performance across the whole school, they're going to be in both. So if the student gets their sort of report card to their parents, or that's shared with them in any way, you know, you see they're going to look, okay, what's my grade in science, and they'll have 2 because they're on 2 different specifications. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, this student here we can see as an example of one who's on 2 pretty similar specifications, I suppose, just different exam boards, but it would just look like this. So we could see, okay, well, they're on a 4.3 here, they're on a U here. And yeah, so absolutely you can add them to multiple specifications. Just a case of being aware that yeah, that they're going to have 2 grades for the same subject.
Amazing. That's great, Toby. Yeah, I know there are a couple of questions that have just come in. So just because we are at time, we'll answer these offline.
Yep.
And yeah, I understand as well, some people joined a bit late. So we will be sending the recording out as soon as possible, probably tomorrow. So anyone that has joined late, or if your department or colleagues didn't quite make it, we'll be sending the recording out. And yeah, we'll follow up on this shortly.
Cool. Yeah, and just one final thing on that. Of course, if you do have any other questions, you don't need to ask them right now, or you don't need to get, you can get an answer at another time, should I say, if you need to. I just want to draw some attention, if you haven't used it before, to our support center down here. You can see you can either sort of open up a message and send through a message, and you can see we get back to you really quickly. Or of course, if you wanted to just almost schedule a call very similar to this, but just one-on-one, where we can really talk through your specific context in more detail and really, help you to find a specific solution. Yeah, if you just open it up here, you can see there's this button to schedule a support call. Then you can just choose which day you want to schedule it for, whenever that may be, and schedule in with a member of our team who will, be more than happy to answer any really specific questions about your classes and your context.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Toby. That was great. And yeah, like we said, we'll be sending the recording out probably tomorrow, in the next couple of days. So you'll receive that soon. And yeah, hopefully see you all again soon for another support webinar.
Excellent.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.